Shoop Sports welcomes you back after week 3 of the NFL. I am your host. You already know who it is. We're going to be going over our incoming week 4 power rankings and headlines. Well, the same old crap is at the bottom. Certain teams are starting to expose themselves a little. Others starting to come to the frame as legit contenders. But who's fake and who's real? We don't make our power rankings by records. We make our power rankings by who the best teams are on the field. So if you see publications putting the Raiders and the Panthers up in their top 10 because they're 3-0, or putting the Colts down the bottom 5 because they're 0-3, those aren't power rankings. Those are just, here, I'm going to rank the teams in record order and then write a blurb about them. No, this is legitimate rankings, who's bad, and this is for your betting purposes, so you know who to fade each and every week. Let's get it started. Number 32 is a bit of a crapshoot between the bottom 5, bottom 6, as it usually is, but the Jets, more than anyone, have shown absolutely zero hope of getting any sort of resemblance of offense right now. I mean, yeah, Zach Wilson has thrown a lot of interceptions, but his offensive line is giving him less than 2 seconds per play before he gets pressured or sacked. He's got no time back there. And granted, the Jets have played a few really tough defenses. Now they're going against Tennessee, a very horrendous defense. If the Jets can't put up points in this game, then there's no hope for them, bottom line. Speaking of no hope, the New York Giants, because the Jets were so inept, I had to put the Giants up there because at least Saquon's coming back and that offense looks like it can do more. But just as the defense was looking better, they lose Blake Martinez, their captain for the season. So now that's their offensive and defensive captains gone for the year. Among all the other issues the Giants have, this team is in trouble. The Texans with Davis Mills, well, it's kind of funny because if you're a third-round rookie, yeah, you can get roughed all you want back there and they won't call a single penalty. But if you're any of the superstar quarterbacks, get touched and to meet a penalty. But that's another thing. It was just crazy seeing Davis Mills get mauled play after play behind his horrible offensive line. But he didn't play all that bad. He just, didn't give him time to throw. And they kept calling 1-yard run plays. So questionable coaching there, but everything about the Texans right now is pretty questionable. The team that they beat, the Jaguars, actually hung tough with the Cardinals there for a little bit. As I predicted in my picks video that the Jaguars would keep it close with the Cardinals, but in the end, the Cardinals proved too much, and Trevor Lawrence is still making horrific decisions because, like these other teams, poor offensive line. The Atlanta Falcons vault from 32 to 28. Big move by the Falcons. And it doesn't really change too much for me. I think I kind of had them a little too low just compared to these other teams who have no hope on offense. But this defense is still going to get destroyed all year. And Matt Ryan is still not the quarterback he was even 3 years ago. So that's that. And then among the shit tier teams, the Detroit Lions still rank among the best of them, and they honestly should have won against the Ravens. And I think it's a testament to what Dan Campbell is doing with this rather untalented roster, how he's elevated them to play tough with some really tough teams that they faced so far. Now they play the Bears this week. I think the Lions get their first win. All right, so now we're in this next kind of tier of not horrible, but wouldn't really want to bet for them, the rest of the season. So, well, not the rest of the season, but the current timeline. You get what I'm saying. I'm going to cut that part out. Anyway, so at number 26, we have the Eagles, who looked embarrassing against Dallas on Monday night. And it really wasn't all Jalen Hurts' fault. His receivers are not making plays. He doesn't have the playmakers. But the coaching is questionable too. Why did the Eagles only run the ball 3 times? It's not like they were facing a considerable deficit the entire game. But obviously, your wide receivers are limited, and you have a very talented back in Miles Sanders. There's one thing about limiting his usage so you don't run into the ground, but there's another thing where you just completely ignore him entirely. Eagles deserve all the blame for that loss. And Washington, my preseason favorites to win this division, do not look like the team they were last year. Their defense has taken a major step back, especially the secondary. And Chase Young hasn't been the dominant force he was. And no matter how good this defensive line is, if their secondary can't stop anyone, then it doesn't mean too much because Washington's not going to put up that many points on offense. Now you got the Bears, horrendous showing by them as well. Their coach needs to be fired as soon as possible. Their offensive line needs to get fixed, but they need to keep playing Justin Fields because he's the lone bright spot for this franchise right now. The Steelers are in a bad place right now. Ben Roethlisberger looks completely washed. There are injuries on both sides of the ball. This team just looks like they belong like from 2 decades ago. They're just not in the present time right now. And Ben Roethlisberger, he looks like someone's drunk dad subbed in to try to play quarterback. They're falling down my rankings. The Dolphins, with Tua, when Tua comes back, they might move up a little bit. But they hung tight with the Raiders, and the Dolphins were one of my picks. But the problems with the Dolphins are like many of these teams in the bottom half. They can't block that well, and when that happens, you're not going to win a lot of football games. Same with the Colts, and the Colts are 0-3, but I'm not putting them in that low yet because they've played some tough games so far. They played the Seahawks, Rams, and now Titans. Sure, you should win some of those games, but it's not like they were losing to crap teams. The problem is Carson Wentz's health, and that stems from the fact that their offensive line suddenly can't block. Not going to get better now. Quentin Nelson has a high ankle sprain. He'll be out for a few weeks, so it might only go downhill for him from here for the Colts. So the Panthers are 3-0, right? Top 15, top 10. Who have they beaten? And they haven't. Besides the fact they haven't beat anyone, now McCaffrey is out for a couple weeks. They're going to go on the road against Dallas, and I don't see how they keep up with the points, especially now that Dallas's defense looks kind of legit. More on that later. The New England Patriots at 19. The Patriots will be one of those middling average teams all year that wins games because of its great head coaching, but loses game because it simply doesn't have the talent on offense to compete. And that goes at quarterback and at wide receiver. Mac Jones should have a good career, but he needs some real talent wide receiver. He's got no one to throw to. Number 18, the Cincinnati Bengals. Wow, that's a nice movement up for them. They looked a lot better than they did the previous week where they couldn't block a thing against the Bears. So the Bengals are a bit all over the place right now. But this offense definitely has potential, and the defense is definitely improved. And if anything, this division, which looked like to be one of the tougher divisions in football going into the year, they're not looking so tough anymore. The Bengals are going to play Jacksonville. They're going to be 3-1, and they're going to have some more divisional games that I think they'll have a good shot at winning them, even against the Browns. I don't think that's so much of a mismatch. So watch out for the Bengals as a sneaky playoff contender, as long as they can block. That's a big if, though. Anyway, so that's my cat, by the way. So she's going to say hi a couple times. But the New Orleans Saints. The Saints are another one of those middling teams all year that are going to win games because it's great coaching, but will be held back, not because of offensive ineptitude, but more so that they don't have the same talent as last year. And Kamara's great and all, but Kamara thrives when he's got guys like Michael Thomas and Drew Brees to take attention away. He's been good, but he's not a game winner, game changer. What will change things for the Saints is their defense. If they keep playing like they do against teams like the Patriots, they should win 8-9 games and be in a hunt maybe for that last spot. But then again, the NFC West is loaded, so who knows? Teams in the NFC that surprised me, the Minnesota Vikings are probably the most surprising team out of any of these teams on this list because Kirk Cousins is playing like an MVP candidate. Don't believe me? Look at these numbers and look at the competition he's faced, and how close some of these games are, that the Vikings end up losing by a field goal to the Cardinals and by a field goal to the Bengals. They could be 3-0. We'd be talking a lot different about this Vikings team. But I'm excited for when the Vikings go against the Packers. Um, the Vikings have a real shot to win this division. The Titans at number 15. The Titans at number 15. Their defense still stinks. Yes, their offense can put up points, and they're probably going to win this division. But this defense stinks, and whoever plays them in that AFC West, because they're probably going to get the 5 spot, and Titans are going to get the 4 spot. It's a one and done deal for the Titans, unless they make a deadline acquisition. The Ravens at 14 are looking a little iffy. Their injuries are catching up to them, and they're not really that explosive team. They still have Lamar, though, and Lamar is a game changer. And they still have great coaching as well, and enough playmakers on defense to keep them in games. But regardless, that penalty should have been called on the Ravens for the delay of game, and they should have lost that game to the Lions. But they'll take the win and look to get that division crown. The Seahawks are now 1-2. Surprisingly, they lost to the Vikings, and it's kind of like a tale of two halves with this team. You look last week where the Seahawks were up 24-7 against the Titans, and then the Titans come storming back. Same thing happens again this week against the Vikings, up 17-7, and then they don't score another point after that. So there's always some weird stuff going on with the Seahawks team, especially lately. But they need to get it together, because if they can't perform like this against the NFC West teams, bottom line. All right, so now we're into our top 12, and I have the Raiders at number 12, and I'm slowly moving them up, even though I know for a fact that their schedule hasn't really reflected on, they're overrated. They're simply overrated. They beat a banged-up Ravens and a banged-up Steelers team who, through 2 weeks, are not looking very impressive. Through 3 weeks, are not looking very impressive. And then they beat the Dolphins by 3 with a backup quarterback. And look, they pulled out the win in overtime. But you're telling me that the Raiders can compete with a lot of these teams in the top half, especially the top 10? Sure, they could make the playoffs, but they haven't even played. I still think they're the worst team in this division, as evidenced by my rankings, but they haven't even played anyone in their division yet. Let's wait for some division play and see how they fare against those opponents. Then maybe I'll start believing. The 49ers have a lot of issues on both sides of the ball. The 49ers do not have any healthy running backs, and they love to run the ball, which is problematic for their offense. And their line is not playing up to standard as well. And on defense, they can't stop the run for some reason. The Packers had their way with them. But they're still a pretty good team, and I get the feeling that Trey Lance is going to be taking over soon for Jimmy Garoppolo. They have games coming up against the Rams and the Seahawks, 2 very important games. If things don't go well for the 49ers, it's going to be Trey Lance time, and this team will be completely different. I think Trey Lance will be that much of a difference maker. Starting off the top 10, it pains me to say it because I hate the Cowboys. But they are a top 10 team because their defense is not legitimate, but much improved from where they were last year. They're still young, so they're not going to have great games all the time, but big thing is that they got torched in the secondary last year, and now all of a sudden Trayvon Diggs is developing into a shutdown corner, and that's big for this team, because now that Micah Parsons developing as kind of like a pass rusher, if they get both those things going, and a lot of these guys in the defense are young players too, so these guys keep developing to pair with this already scary offense, then not only are they shooing for the NFC East, but they could win a playoff game. It's not out of the realm. The Broncos at number 9 still haven't played anyone good, but in every game they've played, they've blown out their inferior opponent. So we can't say that they've shown any signs of weakness so far. They finally have a kind of tough game at home against the Ravens, and I think that's a game that the Broncos win. That's one of the games I'll be targeting on my picks page, but the Broncos are being underrated by the public. Their roster on offense and defense is very superb. If they had one of these elite quarterbacks that these other top teams have, then they would totally be up there. They have one of the best rosters in the NFL, but Bridgewater will hold them back in some way or form. The Packers at number 8, far cry from where they were at the start of the season. Looks like those memories are long forgotten as Aaron Rodgers leads a comeback drive. And what else is there to say? Rodgers is going to do his thing, but can the defense step up a little bit so Rodgers doesn't have to do all this? The Cardinals are moving down another spot to number 7, and I still really, really like this team, but the Cardinals are struggling against inferior opponents, teams that they should be better at. They're pulling out these games against the Vikings and the Jaguars, but it's a little sloppy, and Kyler isn't playing at that MVP level that we thought he was after the first week. We thought he would be after the first week. But they got a couple prove-it games coming up against 2 NFC West opponents, so watch out for that. Number 6, the Chiefs. I was very wary of moving this Chiefs team down all too much because the reason they lost on Sunday was because of 3 turnovers in their first 3 possessions after they were deep in the Chargers' territory. But ball security is a concern. And the fact that Mahomes threw some ugly interceptions trying to pull his team from behind, well, it's quite simply, they looked inferior to the Chargers. They looked inferior to the Chargers on Sunday. And that's why I have the Chargers at 5. Because the Chargers are absolutely legit on both sides of the ball. On offense, this is probably going to be the most fun team to watch all year. Besides maybe the Rams and the Bucks, the Chargers offense has been together for a few years now. Besides the quarterback, but their playmakers have been there, and they're all electric. And offense moves fluidly, and the Chargers secondary made some plays against Mahomes. Don't discount that too. Add in the fact that their offensive line is rebuilt, and you see how many teams have terrible offensive lines, and the Chargers are blessed to have one of the best ones in the NFL. This team is going places this year. They could definitely challenge the Chiefs. Not saying they're going to win the division yet, but they can definitely challenge for it. The Cleveland Browns at number 4. Baker Mayfield didn't play all that well, but it didn't really matter because the defense was absolutely electric. 9 sacks. Was it the Bears' ineptitude? Who knows? But the Browns are good at these types of games. Low scoring, beat you in the trenches kinds of games. That's the kind of games they're going to beat you in. But would like to see Baker Mayfield play better. My top 3 teams, the Bills. Wow, that's what we've been waiting for. Though, obviously, Washington's defense should be better than they are. They're not playing up to standard, but the Bills' offense look like what they were last year. We need to see more of that going forward because that's what made this team so exciting. The Bucks dropped that game to the Rams, who are now my number 1 team. The Bucks were missing a couple key guys in Jason Pierre-Paul and Antonio Brown. Now, obviously, not every team's going to be healthy 100% of the time, but their secondary is a cause for concern because teams like the Rams can go in there and light them up. And if it's always you can't get into a shootout always with a team like the Rams because the Rams are pretty good on defense and they can make more plays if your guys aren't making plays. And that's why I have the Rams at number 1. Stafford has taken his team to a whole nother level, and they should be consensus number 1 everywhere after being the former Super Bowl champs. That's my power rankings. So picks coming up later this week, as well as Daily Fantasy Saturday. But yeah, this is Shoop Sports signing out.